This is the overhand knot. It's the most simple knot that can be tied. The most physically simple knot that is possible to tie. It doesn't have very many applications of itself, other than maybe stopping the rope from going through a hole like that, but it is a building block for other knots. And also on the list is overhand on a bight. This is a bight of rope, just like that. Take about 1.5 feet or so. You're going to tie the overhand on a bight the same way you tied the single simple overhand, only now you're making it with a loop. This loop will stay secure in size and it won't slip. However, it doesn't retain as much strength in the rope as the figure 8 on a bight, and so the figure 8 is preferable, but once again, this knot has some uses like securing a loop at the end of the rope. This is the figure 8 knot, the simple figure 8. Once again, this knot doesn't have a lot of applications in and of itself, but it will be the building blocks for many other knots. So that's it right there. Again, you would tie it like you were going to do the overhand, like that would be the overhand right there, but add a half twist and then you have the simple figure 8. For the figure 8 on a bight, to make a secure loop on the end of a rope, such as what you'd attach to a carabiner to anchor that end of the rope, get a bight of rope like this. That would be as minimum length. Most knots you don't want a large loop for your loop size. That's figured on a bight. However, notice it's not dressed. I'll dress it by doing this. Now it's dressed. Oh, it's not totally dressed. Dressing is one of those things that will take a little bit of practice to get it right. Now it's dressed. Now I can confidently identify that knot when I do a safety check. Here's that figure 8 on a bight. This time we're going to add a backup of a Fisherman's. Some teams will back up their figure 8 knots with a Fisherman's. A lot of times a loop even that size is going to be enough to clip your carabiner into. You do want to leave at least this much tail when you tie your knots, so that way as the rope tightens in the knot, it doesn't draw tail into it and come up short. So this would be your simple single Fisherman's safety backup knot. You do want it tied up pretty close to the knot, but far enough away so that you can identify it. Done. To tie a figure 8 follow through, which is how you would tie the end of a rope into your harness, or tie your rope in an anchor onto a tree, start by tying your simple figure 8 and then leave yourself enough tail to get around the object and retie through your starter figure 8 knot. So everywhere this goes, this will go. So that went through there, so this goes through there. Next part goes around there, so this part goes around there as well. Next part goes in there, so this goes in there. This goes around there, so that's going to go around there. Last part, that goes through there, so this will go through there. Notice that I'm leaving enough tail so that when I've tied my knot, there's sufficient tail. It needs to be at least this much so the rope gets pulled tight, it's not too short. So how to dress that knot. Dressing that knot is always important. Sometimes it can take you a couple of tries to dress a knot, and that's okay, but you do always want to dress it because that's going to allow your safety officer to make a good, accurate safety check. This is now dressed. Basically, when it's pretty, it's good. You should be able to count it using the 2 check method. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. That's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. As in 2 is in a pair. A pair there, a pair there, a pair there, a pair there, and a pair there. And you should get to 10. If you don't get to 10, you don't have a... So one more figure 8 knot that's on the list is the double figure 8. Start with a longer than normal bight because you're going to need a bit more length. So this would be the tail. That would be the main portion of the rope. start like you would tie the figure eight normally, but instead of putting the end through, lay the middle of that across there and push that through with your thumb like that. Then take this, go up and around all of that, all the way up to the very top of the knot, and then pull the loops that you made while holding that up there. This makes 2 loops, and you can make one loop larger or smaller if you wish, just like that. One thing I like about it, it's a bit easier to untie, which is a lot of what I think about when I tie knots. To tie a loop in the middle of a rope and be able to pull it either direction, up or down, from the middle of the rope, we don't use the figure eight on a bight because that would be splitting the knot, and those knots are not designed for that. This is, do the 3 wraps around your hand, do that again, 1, 2, 3, take the one closest to your thumb, put it over there, pinch it, pull this just a little bit, and I'm going to tuck it through there, through underneath all of them, right? So it's going to go through there. I'm going to pull on the part that I passed through and my 2 tails. Now I have the Alpine Butterfly. This can make a secure attachment point in the middle of a rope and can be pulled this way or that way. Done. A knot to join 2 ends of rope together is traditionally called a bend. The double fisherman's is a really useful knot to tie 2 ends of the rope together. You can do it with 2 dissimilar sizes of rope. Notice that I cross back over as I go. I don't wrap this way, I wrap back over itself, form a cross right there. As I come through, this last little bit of rope is going to go through there, like that. Make sure you have enough tail. And there we go, we have 1 fisherman's. On one side you should see an X formation, and on the other side it should just be 2 parallel ropes. For the other side of the fisherman's, notice that it will slide until you finish the other side of the fisherman's. Notice, crossed it back over itself. Cross it. A lot of people go here, but that's a mistake. You need to cross it all the way over that one, right? And then through. So over that one and then through is going to be my double fisherman's. I want my X's to be on the same side. That is, the X of this one is on the X of that one, which I didn't get this time, so I need to make another video.
1.
So I'm going to start with my rope crossing this way, right? Crossing over rather than under. That's why I didn't get the X's on the same side last time. So over. Again, notice crossing over, not just continuing in that direction, but actually crossing over. When this comes up, it needs to cross over this rope right here and then go through there. Over and then through there. This way my 2 X's are going to be on the same side. X1, X2. We are good.
2, 1.
Notice on this Prussic, we have the double fisherman's. Start by holding the knot. Wrap once. Notice it goes through itself, making a girth hitch. That's 1 girth hitch, 2, and 3. Then bring it together by dressing it. When you dress the Prussic, this bar right here should go all the way to the outside without any interruptions. You don't want the knot to be right in the middle. You want it to be a little bit to one side so that when you clip a carabiner into it, it won't be right on the knot. Once that's there, notice that the Prussic catches. So the Prussic is a rope grab device. It's not a descent control device, a friction device in that way. It's just a grab. It releases typically at 1,200 to 1,400 pounds. It varies depending on your rope.
1.
Now, in order for the Prussic to accurately and reliably grab, it does need to be dressed securely. If it's super loose, you may pull on it and it may not catch. However, the faster it gets pulled, the more likely it is to catch, as in the harder of a sudden jerk that it is. Done. This next one is the Bowline. and it accomplishes making a secure loop at the end of a rope. The Bowline does require a backup safety knot. Throw my crossover loop right there. This is the loop that I'm making that goes around my knee. The rabbit, that's the end of the rope, comes up out of the rabbit hole, goes around the tree, and then goes back down the same rabbit hole. And there is my bowline. Now I need enough tail to tie the backup fisherman's knot, so I'm going to pull just a little more through. And this is my backup safety fisherman's knot. The bowline does again require a safety knot. I like to put that real close to the bowline knot, but not necessarily touching it. It's just so that when it's safety checked, it's easy for the safety check. When you tie the Yosemite back up for the bowline, it's important that you tighten the bowline first and then tie your Yosemite. If you don't, the picture shows you there bad things can happen. So with the tail here, I start by going around. So there should be another turn added here to match that one, and then just straight up through for where your main line comes from. Once again, tighten it, pulling this and that, these two, and then your Yosemite tail last. That is a real important part. So that's what it should look like. I've done this not intentionally to match the picture of how to do it right and how to do it wrong. Done. One crucial part about knowing when your Yosemite is correct is looking for this cross between this and that. If there's not a cross right here, the Yosemite is incorrect and the structure of the bowline is compromised. So this cross between this strand and that strand of rope is crucial and must be there. Done.
2, 1.
Hitches are like knots that are tied around an object, so like an object like a carabiner. A Munter hitch is really useful because it is a way to create a friction tool on the rope. So the knot can flip, the hitch can flip either way, as you see here, and it's still a Munter either way. It's also called the Italian hitch. Now, it's preferable that it not run along the gate and thereby open the gate accidentally. So you do want to plan about which way your Munter is going to operate. That's the preferable way, with the rope along the spine of the carabiner rather than the gate side. Again, on how to tie that Munter, take your rope, flip it. From here, you can connect these two sides and clip there, right? Or, if I were to open that back up the way it was, you could put these two sides together and clip there. Either way, you'll have a Munter. If you don't end up with the rope along the spine, like that, just retie your Munter, clipping it the other way, and you'll probably get it right the next time around. So, what this does is you can rappel or you could lower a single person load on this. So not a rescue load, which is 2 people, but a single person load. This is a friction device, meaning that if I have a load here, it will be much less force on this side. So that's why you can rappel with it if you drop your ATC, but it will twist your rope up as you
2, 1.
Almost to the end of the list of required knots is the Clove Hitch. One thing about it is you can tie it in the middle or the end of a rope, oftentimes for a multi-point load-sharing anchor system. So flip one that way, flip the other one the opposite way, and then overlap them. And then you can clip the carabiner in there. And one nice thing about this is you can adjust it. So that way you can get the amount of tension on it that you want. This is how to tie the Clove Hitch around a closed-ended object like a chair instead of the carabiner. Cross over, and then cross under. The Clove Hitch will cinch up on it. This knot is not stable by itself. You're going to need to secure this into something else, but a big part of it is this would anchor onto one article, and this will oftentimes go anchor on something else. So this is really useful for that. So to join two ends of rope together, two ropes that are not too dissimilar in size, start by tying your simple figure 8. Of course, this is the amount of tail that you're going to want. Take the other rope, and you're going to trace from the tail end everywhere that goes through to end up with essentially tying an identical knot in that knot, right? And always pull a little bit more into the knot to get the amount of tail, like more than you think you need. That's how much it takes, essentially. And dress it. Now, this knot, some agencies will do the fisherman's back tie. That's the single fisherman's. So as you can see, the knot is dressed, and some agencies will do a safety back tie on that. Never just an overhand or a half hitch if you're doing a safety back tie. The single fisherman's is what you want. That's it. We'll tie another one over here. Pinch it right there. Once, twice, crossing over itself, as you can see right there, continuing around. The end of this is going to go through there, making sure to pass over that part. It's always best if your backup knots are close to the knot that you're backing up, like that, and like that. Done. So the next we're going to do the Hasty Rescue Seat Harness. Start by taking webbing. If you're an average size man, about 17, 18 feet is going to be about the minimum, so 20 is what we usually stock. Grab the ends, feed the whole thing through to get to the middle. Once you're at the middle, take it, go about a foot off of the middle. Take that part, we're going to do it over the shoulder now, and tuck that into your waist. Take the tails and feed them through your legs. So I reached from behind my thighs to grab the tails there. I pull that part that I tucked in my waistband out, and now you should be here, having a loop in the middle and a tail on each side. Make sure that your center loop is not crossed over, because if it is, once you are here, make sure that this is not crossed over like that. You don't want that cross in the middle. Make sure it's nice and straight. You won't die if it's crossed over. You'll only wish you had, because it'll be so uncomfortable. Then take the tails, pass them through that center loop, like so. Throw it over your shoulder after you've passed it through for storage. Take the other one, pass it through, throw it over your shoulder. Then take and tighten up. You should have 2 secure loops around your legs now, and you want to pull them up and pull them tight and secure. This is what it should look like. Take each of the tails and pass them back. A lot of people mistaken by passing them forward like that. Don't do that, just back. That's the only thing you want to do. As you pass them back, you need to make one complete loop around your waist. Okay, so having made that one complete loop, notice that I could tie here and I would have a complete loop. However, I would have all these tails. I don't want to trip over that. So I'm going to go ahead and pass those around again. There's not really any max number of passes around you can do. And then I'm going to finish this in a water knot. An alternate to that, which is easier, is the square knot, but we're going to do the water knot because it's a knot everybody should know. That's a little bit short, so I'm going to take this side and come back over here with it, and I'm going to tie my knot on this side. So the water knot starts, it's just an overhand follow through, so you're going to tie that overhand knot. Completing that water knot while making sure that it stays snug, the harness stays snug around you, take the tail and start from the tail of that knot, not from this side, but from the tail side. Also, you want to feed it from the top side. This would be the top side, that would be the bottom side. It wouldn't be wrong to do it from the bottom side, it's just like really hard to do. So loosen it up a little bit, going from the top side of the knot, trace that overhand all the way through. Notice that this goes that way, so this will go that way also. A lot of people mistakenly do like follow it half the way through and not all the way through. You'll know that you've done it right when your tails come out at opposite sides like that. If your tails come out the same side, you haven't followed it all the way through. So you'll end up with this. You're going to want to tighten that. So start by feeding slack into it, right? Make sure that harness is nice and snug. Feeding that through. Make sure that there's no twists in it. It should all lay flat. It should all look dressed when you're done. There we go. I'm going to dress it just a little bit more. There we are. If you have tails like this, you don't want to trip over them, you can do half hitches to get rid of those tails and make them not a tripping hazard. The reason why we at the start did an offset from the middle was because we don't want this knot in the front where your carabiner is going to be. So again, you can make those shorter by doing the half hitches. So again, from the shoulders, a good point of view to get this right. A lot of people will, when they go to tie in, they'll just mistakenly grab the waist portion and think that they're good. However, that means that you don't have anything pulling on your legs. So you don't want to do that. Start by grabbing the lower loop, the lower leg loop, then get that waist loop. Now, you do want a locking carabiner for sure, so you would be attaching to your rope right there and then making sure your carabiner is locked. One thing I found about these is if you wear them for more than a couple of minutes, they always sag down and kind of trip you up a little bit. So that's one reason why to make it snug, and also why if I'm wearing one of these, I nearly always want to wear a chest harness because the chest harness keeps it up, and we're going to do that next. Okay, so this one isn't absolutely required. It's a little bit of a bonus, but it's a really good one to have because if you ever end up inverted, like you're working on the edge and you fall, you do want something to catch your shoulders so that you don't just come out of your harness, because if you invert in just a seat harness, you might actually come out. If you're an average size guy, kind of like me, 12-foot webbing's about right. Start by that. If your webbing's a little bit longer, you can have a little bit longer tails. You do want a tail about this long when you tie the water knot. Again, coming from the top side, which would be this side, I'm going to take my webbing. By the way, this is 1-inch nylon tubular webbing. It's very strong, and this is not just hardware store webbing. There we are. Okay, so continuing on, take it, you should have a loop just like that. Make sure to pass it around your back side, your back. Try not to get any twists in it. Then take it, and you'll have one loop here, one loop here. Pass one arm through one loop, not both. It doesn't matter which arm. You should be here. Make sure that the knot you tied is on your back and not in the front, especially not like in this loop. That would be the worst place for the knot to be. Take this, pass it through there, cinch it down pretty snug, and then pass it through again, going between those two sides. There we are. We're going to connect this to our waist, however, this is too long, so I'm going to do half hitches here until it's short enough to actually pull. So continuing, this is too long to actually pull my waist harness up. I'm going to use half hitches tied right here to make it short enough to actually pull my waist harness up. That's a half hitch. Is this still too long? Another half hitch. That might work. I like it to be pretty short and pull my waist harness up pretty good. The more you do that, the more comfortable you'll be when you're on the rope. Then you should have to bend down a little bit in order to connect them. If they feel pretty snug, then you have it right. So now I could go inverted because I have this passing over my shoulder. If I go upside down in my harness, I'm not going to fall out. If I didn't have this chest harness, I might actually fall out of my waist harness if I go upside down. So they went, okay, tails together, pull it all through. Now you're at the middle, go 1 foot off, take that, tuck it in your pants, grab the tails from behind, get the loop, make sure it's not across, put your tails through, throw them over your shoulder. Just like that. Snug them up, go around your waist. Now here's the alternate knot. You can tie a square knot like that. The other side is the opposite, so you should have like 2 yokes essentially. A yoke on this side and a yoke on. Noticing that you have like essentially 2 yokes, a yoke there and a yoke there, and it should look like that. If you don't have that, then you have a granny knot, and the granny knot will kill you. So make sure that you have a square knot and not a granny knot. This does need backed up with a minimum of 2 half hitches. I have a whole bunch of tail with this webbing, so that is not an issue in my case. That's 2 half hitches right there on that side. So here's 1 half hitch on the other side of the knot. When I say 2 half hitches, that's on each side of the knot. Those are still a little long. I'll probably do some more half hitches just to get them out of my way. If you want to see that half hitch, it's just like that and then through. It's really the most simple knot that can be tied. The water knot, as you can see, I have adequate tails. I do like to back up the water knot with a half hitch as well. With webbing, you can do half hitches. With ropes, you don't do half hitches as much to do backup safety knots. There we are. Pass it around your back, making sure you don't have crossovers. Take it, pass it over your shoulder. Notice that the knot has wound up in the front. I'm going to pull it until the knot is towards my back, just like that. Take this loop, pass it underneath of that loop. Pull it snug, pass it through again, and then do your half hitches to make it the right length. That's about right. To connect the two, start by grabbing the lower loop. You could call it the crotch loop or the leg loop, and then the waist loops, making sure you get all the loops. It's really important to get all of them. It'll be very uncomfortable if you don't, and it's a safety hazard if you don't get the lowest leg loop. Just like that. Lock your carabiner when you connect. So this is how you would attach your harness to a rope. If you're going to be lowered from the top, where you are not controlling your descent, but they are from the top, where your team controls your lower. Figure 8, attach here, make sure it's locked. Of course, anytime you do rope rescue operations, you're going to have a second line, but this would be like an example of your belay. It's done. Alright, so this would be my backup safety belay. I could rappel on the second line, making that munter. And then 2 sides together, like that is where you could clip it, or you could clip these 2 sides. Either way, so simple, it's hard. Carabiner. flip it, put two sides together. When you clip in, make sure that each carabiner has its own connection to all of the webbing straps. Get the munter up there where it's going to operate. Now I'm set to be lowered on belay and rappel on. Alright, operating with just a munter does work. However, a much safer way to operate with a munter is to have an auto blocking setup with the munter. So for that, if I'm rappelling, here's my munter, right? That's where I'd clip. Another angle there. I'm going to take a carabiner that's big enough to have a munter operating in it, right? Oh, I have it on my gate side, so I'm going to retie it. See if it comes out better. There we go. Notice I have an extension here. I'm going to go ahead and see will that come. Yep, there. Put that through the carabiner down here, back into my locking pear-shaped carabiner that's large enough. Lock that
over.
I'm going to take this. For this load, you don't have to have 3 passes, 2 is sufficient. Put my Prussic on there, dress my Prussic. Clip it down here. The reason why you have to have this extension is because you can't have your Prussic come up and hit your carabiner, otherwise your Prussic won't work. So that's why you need an extension. And here, this is now a hands-free system. I can let go of this, and on the tail side there's not going to be as much force. That Prussic is going to auto grab, and so now I can work, do whatever I need to do with both hands, and it's going to be a very secure, very safe setup. If I get distracted, it auto stops. And I just feed this down, and I can rappel that way. Okay, so how do you know if you really know your knots? Well, it's one thing to know your knots, as my instructors told me. When the sun is shining, it's 70 degrees, it's daylight, you're not stressed, you're just in a training situation. It's easy to tie your knot. No one's looking over your shoulder. It's another thing to know your knot when it's midnight in a blizzard and someone's bleeding out because they wrecked their snowmobile and have a tib fracture and there's blood everywhere. And now all of a sudden, tying that knot is part of saving that person's life. So, you want to be able to tie your knots in stressful situations. One way to see if you really know your knots would be jump in the shower with your knot tying practice rope, turn the water all the way cold, and see if you can tie every one of your knots. Yeah, if you can do that, then you're ready for this class. So the short of it is, you don't know your knots until you really can tie them under stress. I remember I did a rope rescue class for certification through one of the largest certifying bodies for that. And we had a young man that did really well, and then we went rock climbing, and he was at the top of the rock climbing route and needed to clean the rope and then rappel down. He could not figure out or remember how to tie a figure 8 follow through into his harness. Something having to do with being 60 feet up and knowing that his life depended upon being able to tie that figure 8 successfully added stress to where he could no longer tie the figure 8 follow through. So what I'm getting at is, it's one thing to tie the knot successfully once. You need to tie the knot successfully many times over multiple days and in different situations, and preferably under stress to know if you really know it or not. And in case you're wondering, yes, the day did come when I did have to be on the side of a mountain in the middle of winter, in the middle of a blizzard, in the middle of night, with someone who had a snowmobile accident and open fractures, and they are not going to live much longer because they've been there for a while and they have hypothermia, and getting him down on a rope system from the very steep, slippery side of the mountain depended on the use of ropes. Now, God had miraculously supplied the ropes. None of us, in our infant wisdom, brought ropes to this call. But God literally supplied them when we prayed for them. And now I had to tie all of that with gloves on in a stressful situation, with everyone looking over my shoulder and waiting for this to happen. By God's grace, it happened because there was adequate preparation for it. So yes, by God's grace, I was able to tie those knots and set the rope system up successfully because by God's wonderful grace and cooperating with Him, there had been adequate preparation for that time so that the system was built properly, and God blessed so that we were able to get our patient down. Many other miracles that night actually contributed to that. I'd love to tell the story, but for our purposes, the moral of the story is tie your knots regularly, get a practice rope, keep it at hand, tie them at least once a week between now and the time that class starts, and you'll know them. If you don't tie them at least once a week, you won't really know them, and that'll be disappointing for all of us. So instead, prepare for success by practicing every day with even the knots that you believe you already know. Different kinds of carabiners. Here we have a screw lock. This is the pear-shaped or carabiner. You screw that there and it locks it. One thing I don't like about these as much is it's the hook nose style. So every time you try to get something out of it, it always catches on the hook. I don't like that about it, but it is a nice shape. It's one that works particularly good with Munters. This one is a non-locker with a solid bar as the gate rather than a wire gate. It's also still a hook nose, as you can see. Here we have a key nose, and I really like those because they don't catch when you try to get something out of it, and it's also a screw gate. Here we have a key nose and wire gate. So these are more for recreational climbing. However, if you have two of them back to back facing opposite sides, they do serve the purpose of one.
Those who trust in mere human strength, who rely on their own power and turn away from me, are like a shrub in the desert. They'll never know when good things are coming. They'll live in dry, barren places, in a land of salt and thirst, where nothing grows. But those who trust in the Lord, who put their confidence in me, are like trees planted by the water. They send their roots deep into the stream. They don't fear the heat when it comes, and their leaves stay green. Even in a year of drought, they keep producing fruit, never stopping, never slowing down.